By all recordable metrics, Deepkin in Warcry, they're pretty bad. They regularly make it to the bottom of people's tier lists. Their win rates aren't that good, and outside of a few, albeit very interesting Warhammer Underworlds units, and of course the very good Akhelian King, they don't really have all that much to offer. Their playstyle isn't all that compelling, and I don't find them all that interesting as a warband. So what have we done today? I've been kind of scouring my brain for things to do videos on, and I decided to take a look at Deepkin themselves. So what I've got here is this is how I would go about redesigning Deepkin. I've done a full top to bottom look at the faction itself. I've asked the guys over in Age of Sigmar how Deepkin play, and I've tried to import as many of those interesting, fluffy abilities into Warcry. So hopefully I've got something that I feel works, well, I mean, it should work a whole lot better, and something that's a lot more interesting to play for you guys to check out. Okay, everybody, we did it. We absolutely smashed it last year. We hit that 3,000 subscriber goal. Let's do it again this year. We're going for 5K. All you need to do is like and subscribe. And in fact, no, you don't need to subscribe. What I would like you to do now, after you finish watching this video, I've got a massive playlist of all sorts of things Warcry. Check out one of those videos and see if that's what you like. But if you want to throw some more support my way, you can join me here as a member. You can join me over on Patreon. You can join my Discord. Links for that are going to be down in the description below. Either way, you get to see stuff before it's released. You get to have a say into the kind of content that I create in the future. That's it from me for now. Let's get back to the video. So to start with, how do they play in Age of Sigmar? I asked the Deepkin Reddit, and they told me a whole bunch of things. The takeaway is that Deepkin themselves are an elite warband. They have a lot of control elements, a lot of buffs and debuffs to their opponents. They are super, super fast, of course, thanks to the eels, thanks to the shark, thanks to the turtle. They've got teleport, which allows them to move around the battlefield, and they are pretty glass cannony, so they're going to be using all of their debuffs and their control and their movement to be able to dictate what's going on the battlefield, and then hit hard, hit fast, so they can win the game on their own terms. But if they are ever caught, they kind of fall apart. So that's the overall playstyle that I'm going to try and replicate, and I think I've done a decent enough job of it. So let's go through all of the units themselves. Let's go through any changes that I've made to them, and we will see what makes them tick. The first thing that I want to talk about is the battle trait. Their battle trait, as it is, kind of encompasses all of these things that we've been talking about. It's Power of the Tides. Battle rounds 1 and 2, you get +1 move. Battle rounds 3 and 4, you get +1 strength. Very simple, but it enables you to set up your games and set up your turns, run in there, get the bonus strength boost, and do the damage you need. Because of that, I didn't really want to mess around with any of the points values or any of the actual stats of the units. I actually think that they're pointed okay. The main problem with Deepkin in Warcry is not that their abilities are bad, they're all way too expensive for what they bring to the table. So that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to trim down those abilities. We're going to rework a whole bunch of them so they do basically, so those fighters basically do more of what they do in Age of Sigmar, and I feel that all comes together in a cohesive list. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be looking at the Akhelian King. I've consolidated the two profiles of the King. It's basically true that you only really take one of the Akhelian Kings anyway. You might as well smash those points profiles together. Kings at the moment, they saw a lot of play early in Warcry, but they've fallen off a lot because ultimately they don't do that extreme damage that you need to take on things like Gut Lords, and they're really tough to score, so they've kind of got the Gorger problem. If you bring a clawback, yes, the clawback can do a whole bunch of damage, but it's only got toughness 3, and those 35 wounds it got will not last forever. So that's all we've done here. I've kind of smashed a couple of the profiles together. But 2-inch range of the spear, 5525 is pretty good. It keeps all of its abilities anyway. Deepkin across the board are going to keep their double that allows them to get that free move off early in the game, so I think that's pretty good. And the Akhelian King does have a very good ability that gives him a whole bunch of extra attacks. So we're going to kind of keep the King as he is, put a little bit more points onto him to kind of take into fact that he is better than he used to. But I still think at 310, it's expensive, but it's pretty good. Next, I wanted to look at a couple of new abilities, specifically for the Soul Render and the Soul Scryer. Now, in Age of Sigmar, what do? The Soul Render, specifically in Warcry, the Soul Render has a net, and it can net things. okay. But what it does in Age of Sigmar, it has the ability to resurrect Namarti thralls. Soul Scryers, on the other hand, allows them to set up units from the Earthsea, and in Age of Sigmar, Idoneth have this whole ability where they can put things into the Earthsea, they can jump in, jump out of it, allows them to teleport around and redeploy. So this is the kind of thing that I wanted to capture. The Soul Render, I have basically given it its Resurrect. It's going to be able to resurrect Namarti thralls, anything with the Deepkin and the minion rune marks. If they've been taken down, reset them up. Namarti themselves are still going to be fairly expensive. They're still going to be 80 points effectively. So it's not a game-breaking ability for them. But if they're going to be running as this smaller, maybe 7-man, more elite style warband, I'm mainly thinking about New Nighthaunt here when I'm looking at these fighters. So if they're going to be in that range, having the ability to resurrect just the Namarti will kind of be an invaluable tool for them to be able to keep up that action economy. And I think that's what they really need at the moment. The Soul Scryer, though, I've given it the Finder of Ways triple, which is basically the same as what it does in Age of Sigmar. Instead of putting things into and out of the Earthsea, I've given it something very similar to Kagra and Zashia's teleports, where you can grab Idoneth Deepkin, you can remove them from the battlefield, and then set them up within 6 inches of the fighter. Now, I haven't given it a range. It may well be that it wants like a 12-inch range, because it's pretty big. Kagra can teleport, there's a bit more restriction on it. Cypher Lords don't have a range in their ability. So I think taking a Soul Scryer and being able to move your pieces around where they need to be, get them out of trouble, get them into trouble, I think is a very powerful ability to have. But again, on this kind of smaller, more fragile, 7-ish, maybe even 8 fighter warband, I think it's something that's very welcome. Then I wanted to look at the Eels. I like the Eels, personally. The problem with the Eels is they got movement 10 and they got fly, which instantly makes them really expensive. Which means that what I would want to do is look at their abilities. So that's really what I've done. I've given the Ishlane Guard Biovoltaic Barrier. So this thing, until the end of the battle round, we're going to subtract one of the attacks characteristic of attack actions made by enemy fighters within 3 inches. That allows it to run into things, pop Biovoltaic Barrier, and basically take a lot less damage. It's only 20 wounds, so it won't last forever, but you can at least use it to run into a block of chaff, use the ability, and then last out 1, maybe 2 rounds holding him up. I'm seeing this to be used very much in the same vein as the Nighthaunt Night Shrouds on Steed, who kind of has the same idea to it because it can heal, but instead of healing, we're just going to remove flat damage from it. The Morsar Guard has Biovoltaic Blast. In Age of Sigmar, it has this effect also, but it's on a triple and it's very difficult to use. So now instead, we are basically copying the Brute Wrecker, whichever one, the combat one, the one that kills chaff. We're taking his ability and we are basically allowing you to do that. It does cost 200 points, but at least now we have some way to take down those big chaff swarms that isn't just run into it and just hope for a whole bunch of attacks. Yes, they're both on doubles. The reason for that is because the fighters are expensive anyway, and they're always going to be expensive. So I feel like the abilities have to be kind of pushed to be able to make up for that. I wanted to take a look at Namarti themselves. Namarti Reavers are just way too expensive. I think they're 115 points. So I've reduced them down to 80 to match the Namarti Thralls. That 2-shot, strength 3, 1-3 profile range bow attack isn't going to be winning any awards, so I think they're fine at 80 points. You'll notice that I haven't done anything to address the elf problem, so they're still toughness 3, they're still 8 wounds, but I feel like, especially on the Namarti Thralls, with the ability to bring them back to life using the Soul Render, I think that's kind of okay. I've given Namarti Reavers the minion rune mark that allows them to get resurrected. I've got a new ability for Thralls. In Age of Sigmar, what they can do is they can punch real hard against monsters. So to kind of translate that roughly into a Warcry version, I've gone for a new version of Sweeping Blow. So until the end of the battle round, the next time this fighter makes a melee attack action, critical hits are going to be scored on a 4+. It's on a double, but that's kind of consistent with other abilities of its type. The Namarti Thralls only have 3 attacks, but what it does mean is that on the next action, you're basically going to be doing either 4 or 8 damage on average, which suddenly means that the Namarti Thralls get to punch real hard on a double, but they are still made of paper. They are the paperest of paper blast cannons. That's why there's something like that in there. I think realistically, you're not going to be bringing more than 3 or maybe 4 Namarti Thralls because of all the other pressures that you have on the warband. If you wanted to take an Akhelian King, if you wanted to take all of the support, that's just going to eat up space. Namarti Reavers, not much to say. Made them 80 points. You can resurrect them. They still have the Storm of Fire, the same one that they've always had. I think it's okay. I don't think it's all that bad. So we're going to be keeping them as it is. Finally, what I wanted to add was I wanted to add the turtle, but we can't add the turtle. The turtle's too big. So I settled for sharks. Akhelian Allopex. Here it is. This is my vision of it. 285 points. Yes, it's expensive. It's missing the flyer room mark here. It's supposed to have the flyer room mark, so we got to add that. The model that I kind of, but not really based it on, was the Ogre Warhulk in terms of strength and the range it should be sitting at. But what does it do in Age of Sigmar? It's got Ensnared, and that basically means that net launcher, if it shoots at a thing, it slows down things. It basically has all sorts of anti-mobility tricks. In Warcry, we have an ability that does that. It's the net ability, so I was kind of in two minds about this, how to make this work. Because on the one hand, a ranged net is extremely powerful. On the other hand, it's 285 points, and it costs a lot. So I've gone for a version of this rule that I think is fair. It's on a triple. You make your bonus missile attack action, and it's pretty good. The Allopex's shooting attack at 2436 is pretty standard for what it does. Then you're going to roll a dice on 3 or more. The target is netted. I think you would want to take this. Personally, it's something that I would be interested in taking. It's not a beast in combat. It's like a 3-5-3-4. If you wanted to boost a shooting attack, you're obviously not giving it an extra attack to go 4-5-3-4. So I think there are trade-offs to be made there. That's the Ferocious remark, by the way, and not the Beast remark. And yeah, that's the Allopex. I think it's pretty good. Finally, there are a whole bunch of additional support heroes. There's the Thrallmaster, the Lotan, and the Tidecaster. I didn't give these guys special rules. I think that's something that I'm going to leave for you guys to take a look at. But just to let you know how they work in Age of Sigmar and how I would look to push their rules into Warcry, the Thrallmaster has a Akhelian fighting stance, which allows you to buff Namarti. Now, it's already got this as a triple. It's basically +1 strength to Namarti within 6 inches. That's not a very good triple. If you wanted to buff Namarti to make something that would actually work with the new abilities I've been considering giving them, you could look at maybe +1 attack within 3 inches or 6 inches or whatever range you want it to be. There are plenty of fighters that give other fighters +1 attack on a triple. That would enable the Thrallmaster for you to do like a lot of Namarti. Then suddenly you're throwing doubles in there with +1 attack and Akhelian fighting stance, and you can start punching really high for some really good damage numbers. Then you've got the Lotan, which has Catalog of Souls, which is +3 to control score. Control score in Age of Sigmar is what allows you to capture points, and if you've got high control score than your opponent, then you control it. There is an equivalent in Age of Sigmar. The Dwarves have it, and a couple of other fighters have it, which allows you to count as more models when you are sitting on objectives. So that's definitely something that the Lotan could do. It's a bit obnoxious in the Warcry, I'm not gonna lie. So whether you just want to hand out, okay, every Namarti within range or every Idoneth Deepkin within range counts as one more model when it's capturing objectives, that's something I don't know if you really want to do that. But that's definitely a possibility. Then you've got the Tidecaster, who is Master of Earthsea. Tidecaster is currently a model in Warcry. At the moment, you pick a guy and then that guy gets -1 attack, but it's not really representative of what it does in Age of Sigmar. In Age of Sigmar, your fighters can't be shot unless they're within 12 inches of the target, or it gives +1 movement to your fighters, or it gives mortal wounds if you run away. Any one of those abilities are a possibility. I don't think there is anything that stops you from being targeted by ranged attack actions, unless they're close enough. So that might be something to do for the Tidecaster. If we move into this weird shooting method that people are predicting that may or may not come, running a Tidecaster with an ability like that would be pretty good as a very nice tech piece. And then, of course, it is an ally and it's a hero, so you'd be able to bring it into other things if something really shooty comes along. That might actually be a legitimate option for its ability. I think +1 movement is a bit boring, considering that the battle trait gives movement and the double gives movement on the first turn. Mortal wounds on a retreat, it could be something like you use the ability, anyone in range, if they do a fallback and they run away from combat, you roll a dice, you do that much damage to whoever's fighting you. That's also a possibility. But personally, I would look at minis cannot be shot. I think that's interesting. That'd be the way to go for the Tidecaster. In terms of list building with these guys, personally, I would want to bring the Allopex. I don't know if I would want to necessarily bring an Akhelian King and an Allopex together, because all that really does is it eats up more than half of your points. I'd definitely look at bringing the Allopex, because I think that, especially in this meta that we're in, range disruption and a ranged net would be very, very useful. I'd probably be looking at the Soul Render to bring back those Namarti. I'd probably be looking at a Morsar Guard, because I think that Biovoltaic Blast is very useful, and it is something that, if we do see bigger warbands, it's a very powerful ability to have. And then you just fill out with Thralls. That allows you to put a 7-man warband on the table. I think that's fine for a 7-man warband. It's not going to be punching things off the top tables, but at least it's a lot easier to use and a lot better to use than they are now. You could bring things like the Squid, you could bring things like the Crab if you really wanted to, you could bring Cyrene. She's a very good addition to a list like this. Lots of control pieces, basically being able to hit where you need to and when you need to. But yeah, that's it for Idoneth Deepkin and what I would do to them. Tell me what you think. Tell me which warband you think I should take a look at in the future, and if we get enough likes on that, maybe I'll take a look at it, and maybe I'll look at a redesign. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.